And we're on. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fall of Magic on the Gauntlet calendar. My name is Mike Ferdinando, and I will be your game facilitator. Why don't we go around and introduce ourselves? I'll start. So I said, my name is Mike Ferdinando. I live in Ithaca, New York. I've been playing role-playing games for quite a long time. I started playing RPGs back in 1981 with the Tom Moldvay edition of Dungeons and Dragons Basic Set. Played a lot of D&D in the 80s. I played a lot of GURPS in the 90s. Went back to D&D third edition mostly in the aughts, and Pathfinder in the teens, and then I discovered indie games and story games around 2015, and I kind of jumped into the deep end of the story game pool, and that's mostly where I play these days. I'm an IT manager by day, but I'm a pretty avid role-playing gamer. Oh, and my pronouns are he, him. I joined the Gauntlet in 2018, started playing fairly extensively in 2019, started GMing a little bit before the pandemic started in 2020, and I've been GMing nearly weekly ever since. I really enjoy the Gauntlet. I think it's a great place. I've met a lot of fantastic people here. That's about it for me. Why don't we go around the table? Let's do clockwise order and how I see you in my gallery view. So, Jason, would you say a few words about yourself? And if you've got anything you want to plug, this would be an opportunity.
Sure. My name is Jason Cox. I've been playing for a good long time, since about elementary school. Moved over to indie games around 2012 and find it often difficult to play the things I used to love, which is kind of funny. I'm mostly a player, but I also do research tied to games. Therefore, I naturally have a bunch of things that I ought to plug if they were close enough ready to be plugged, but are therefore also not ready. So I'm looking forward to playing this game. I've been curious about it for a long time, and it was always, I'll catch it at the next Origins, and then there was a pandemic. so I'm excited to have the opportunity to play it online.
Well, fantastic. Glad to have you. Adam, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Adam. Pronouns he, him. I've been playing RPG games since the 90s. Back in the day, I played a lot of World of Darkness mostly. I also GM'd a lot. I actually used to GM more than play as a player. Then I discovered PBTA games, and I've been mostly focused on them in the last years. I joined the Gauntlet late 2020. I've played a little bit, not as much as I'd like to because of some time constraints, but I've luckily had the chance to be more active recently again, so I'm happy about it. I know nothing about the game we are about to play, so I'm really excited to find out about it. And yeah, that's it.
Well, fantastic. Glad to have you. Nathan, would you say a few words about yourself?
Yeah. My name's Nathan. I've been doing stuff with the Gauntlet for not terribly long. I think fall or winter last year is when I joined. It's probably more like fall. Been playing games of one stripe or another, like role-playing games, since high school age, although I didn't really get a lot of more play time in until college. And it was like during last year of college and just getting out of college that I got into like the indie RPG scene more than traditional RPGs I've been playing up to that point. For a while, I'm based in Portland, Oregon, and for a while I helped run a bi-weekly like drop-in story game based event for a couple of years. So I've messed around with quite a few different games from like sort of the mid 2010s era, but fewer games from the what I guess I would call like sort of the itch.io scene of the last few years or so. I dabble in a little bit of game design myself, I've put out a few issues of a indie RPG zine called Forking Paths. Hoping to eventually get another issue out here. Yeah, who knows when that'll be, pandemic and all. Pronouns are he, him for me as well.
Got it. Oh, very cool. Yeah, I guess I missed my own opportunity to plug something. It's not quite ready for prime time, but I'm working on a carved from Brindlewood game based on Brindlewood Bay called Naked City Blues. It's a 1940s hard-boiled detective / film noir game that uses the Brindlewood Bay mystery system. I've play tested a little bit. Now that another game called The Between has come up, which has some more advanced tech that I think would definitely improve my own game by adapting some of that. I'm currently working on a beta release 0.2 right now, so hopefully I'll get that ready to be play tested sometime this fall. Gauntlet's a great place.
I still haven't had a chance to play either The Between or Brindlewood Bay, and I'm really irked about it because I know both are big hits among the Gauntlet people.
Yeah, I haven't decided what I want to run for September yet. I'm kind of like leaning by maybe Brindlewood Bay, but I'm kind of leaning toward Project Perseus, which is a Fortune in the Dark game it's a Fortune in the Dark game about supernatural spies in the 1980s. But the reason I'm a little hesitant to play Brindlewood Bay is I ran it for several months in one of my home groups, and so I want to try a little something different. Anyway, so cool. We are here to play Fall of Magic. Before we get started, let me give the sort of like the elevator pitch. It's a little cat's discussion about Fall of Magic. So CAT stands for concept, aim, tone, and subject matter, and it's a way to sort of codify, elevator pitch what the game is to make sure that we're all on the same page when we get started. So the concept of Fall of Magic is this is a GM-less collaborative story game where we're going to be telling we're going to be telling the story of a journey across a magical land. I like to call Fall of Magic as basically it's a fantasy road trip game. And this is a pure story game. We may occasionally roll a d6, but that's only to like roll on a table of story prompts. There's dice don't really there's no like dice resolution system or anything like that. It's all story games. It's what we think would make a cool story to tell. And that's the aim. The aim is to tell a compelling story about a journey, what we learn about the way, and it's a story of like how your characters grow and develop across this, this interesting, across this difficult journey across a magical land. The tone of Fall of Magic, that we can kind of decide in play, or if we want to have a little tone discussion before we actually start play. Out of the box, Fall of Magic tends to be a little mournful, a little elegiac, but it doesn't have to be. I've played a couple of sessions where it was, it was kind of like a raucous, it was kind of like a raucous jaunt. You tend to just the way we frame the story. There seems to be a bit of tragedy, but it doesn't have to be. And so we can figure out what the tone is. I usually like to go it for kind of like serious with a touch of melancholy, but if people would rather go more humorous or go more epic, we could certainly do it however we want to do it. And the subject matter. Again, out of the box, this game can deal with themes like loss, regret, aging, and sacrifice. So that's the cat's discussion. Any questions before we move on? Okay, well, the next thing I'd like to talk about is safety tools. In our email, I sent out a link to a one-page spreadsheet. It isn't a character keeper. It's just the character. It's just the safety and resources page that I tend to use in my character keepers. Do folks have that? If not, I can. Okay, cool. If we can hop over and look at that. So safety tools. So we're playing a role-playing game, and this is in particular, this is a story game where we're going to be kind of be opening up ourselves and possibly telling emotional stories. Role-playing games are inherently unsafe because we are kind of bearing our souls through our characters. But we're a bunch of strangers that are getting together to play a game over the internet, and each of us individually is more important than this game we're playing together. Safety tools give us a bit of a framework that we can hopefully mitigate the emotional danger that opening up ourselves, like just by its very nature entails. Each of us have a different set of life experiences. What I might think is, what I might think of, nothing. There are subject matters that I might think nothing of bringing up that might be a major, might be a major sore point for you. Safety tools allow us to, I won't say eliminate the danger, but mitigate the danger. It's going to allow us to call certain subjects out that we might not want to deal with, or we might want to treat with caution. It's going to, and it's also going to give us some reactive tools that we can use to, in case we do touch a live wire, we can take a step back, breathe, figure out how we want to adjust and move forward. So we're going to be playing with 3 safety tools. The first one I want to talk about is called Open Door. Open Door is about our personal physical comfort. And Open Door is really simple. It means that any one of us can get up and go whenever we want. Anyone can call a break at any time for any reason. And if you decide that once we've been playing for a little bit and you decide that this game just isn't for you, it is absolutely fine to say, you know what, guys, this game ain't for me. I'm gonna step out. And it's perfectly okay to resign from a game that you're not enjoying. No harm, no foul. Hope to play with you again at some point in the future. But yeah, that's Open Door. Anyone can come and go as they please. Anyone can call a break at any time. Anyone who has a need to step away for whatever reason, please step away. I would ask that if you're going to leave and not come back, if you could, maybe mention it in the chat, just as a courtesy. But if something comes up and you have to leave, you have to leave. Any questions on Open Door? Okay, the next tool I want to talk about is called Lines and Veils. Lines and Veils is a proactive safety tool that allows us to call out subject matters that we either don't want to deal with at all, or that we are willing to deal with only if there is a good degree of caution around them. A line is an element that we will not include in the game. I won't introduce it, and none of you will introduce it. We're just not going to go there. If the subject is lined, it's just, we're not going to deal with that with that subject matter at all. A veil is a subject that we can perhaps acknowledge happens in the game world. We may find signs that it may have happened in the past. We may hear stories of this subject happening somewhere, but it's not going to happen on camera, and it's certainly not going to happen to a player character. These could be negative things. These could be positive things that we don't want to. Like, for example, I tend to veil consensual sexual content. This isn't that kind of game, and if the story is going to go there, we'll just cut away and fade to black, and then pick things up the next morning. And there's a third column which I've seen in a few of these, and I think is a really good idea. It's called Ask First, and that is It's a subject that you might be willing to deal with under certain circumstances, but before we introduce that element, we need to pause the game and have a player-to-player discussion about what are the parameters around introducing this particular subject. So I have a list on this page of a number of topics that many people would prefer to line or veil. I'm going to pause the recording and I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to go through that, and please check mark anything that you wish to line or veil. Okay, we're back. We have our lines and veils. The third safety tool I want to talk about is a reactive safety tool. It's called the X card. Invoking the X card means we need to, if anything happens in the game that makes you uncomfortable, please invoke the X card. The X card is going to pause the game. We'll have a discussion as players to find out what's going on and what we need to do to fix it and make it right. This can be something that happens in the game, like for example, maybe we've introduced a subject that you perhaps hadn't thought of that we maybe want to line or veil and move forward. We'll do that. We'll add it to the lines and veil list. Take it out. If it is something that we really don't really like the way this particular conversation is going, we don't like the way the direction the stories is going because it's making you uncomfortable, that's absolutely fine. We'll when we invoke the X card, we'll pause the game. If it's something that happens in game, we can rewind and take a different approach. Take whatever it is that you've X carded. We'll take it out of the game, or we'll fast forward past this. You can also invoke the X card if things are happening out of the game that are sort of interplayer. For example, if there's another player that's regularly getting your name wrong, or if you think that another player is regularly talking over you, or this is to do an improv analogy. You generally, for story games, you want to yes and people, and if someone's regularly knowing, like saying no to your suggestions, we need to have a chat about that. So you can absolutely invoke an X card if you're having, we need to talk about how different players are interacting with each other. And if it's if the way two other players are interacting with each other is making you uncomfortable, X card, we'll have a chat about it. One thing I do like to call attention to the X card is if we've introduced something that made you feel a little uncomfortable, but you decided to power through it anyway, and then that same subject comes up again, it is absolutely okay to X card something that was reintroduced that you didn't X card the first time. Absolutely okay. Don't feel bad about doing that. So in short, the X card is if anything in the game or out of the game is making you feel uncomfortable, invoke the X card. We'll pause the game. We'll have a chat as players as to what we need to remove or change to make the game enjoyable to you. I do want to throw this one other thing out regarding the X card. We are all human. We've set our lines and veils, and I try my very best to consider those sacrosanct and inviolable. Every once in a while, in our enthusiasm to tell a story, or if we were running a prepared module and there was a subject matter that was in the module and I forgot about it, every once in a while someone may accidentally, in their enthusiasm, trip over a line or a veil. If that happens, please immediately X card. I've only done it once or twice, and I still feel terrible about it, but I want to bring that up. So lines and veils are extraordinarily important. We won't cross them. If someone does, immediately X card. Any questions about lines or veils, X card, or open door? Awesome. This isn't exactly a safety tool, but I do want to mention it. If something happens that causes, since I'm the host of this game, if I suddenly freeze and lose internet connection, if I lose internet connection, I believe the meeting's going to drop because I'm the host. or if I look very concerned, or if I suddenly turn off camera, look very concerned, take my headphones off and walk off camera without a word and don't come back for 10 minutes. If I'm not back for 10 minutes, assume something has happened and the game is over. Take the rest of your evening back. I'll try to let you know if something weird happened. Like my cat knocked over something breakable and I have to clean up a whole lot of broken glass, or we had a power failure. That has happened to me in the past. But if I'm gone for 10 minutes and don't come back, assume the game is over. Assume the session is over and take your evening back. We'll figure out how to go from there.
I know you said that since you're the host, if there's a disruption, it'll end the meeting. Where should we look for like the coming back part?
The coming back part. Yeah. So yeah, I think it'll hold the meeting for like 5 minutes if the host's internet connection goes, to give the host time to get back. But if it goes back, I'll probably try. I have all your email addresses, so that'll probably be my first line of defense to try to contact you via email. I do have the Gauntlet Slack on my phone, so I don't know if everyone's on the Gauntlet Slack. So I usually go email because I definitely have your email addresses.
Sure.
Okay, that concludes our safety discussion. Let's talk about the game. So, Fall of Magic I'm reading from the instruction manual here because it puts it better than I could. Fall of Magic is a collaborative storytelling game where we play a group of travelers in the company of the Magus. On the way, we'll encounter strange hosts, fantastic places, and perilous choices as we play to discover who our characters are, how they relate, and how our journey changes them. So, if you would hop over to our Roll20 session. It looks like everyone's in the game. This game uses, if you've ever seen the physical map, what you see on Roll20 is printed onto this like 5-foot long faux leather scroll. It's a beautiful artifact. And it's, just like what you see on Roll20. You'll see that there are 5 sets of tokens across the top. Each of us are going to choose a token to represent ourselves. And then the 5th one we'll use to represent the Magus itself, the Magus themselves. So, the way this game is going to work, there's a little bit of a ritual to start, and I'll perform that. It's basically we read this. I basically read the premise of the game, which is going to be. Again, it's printed right on the map. Magic is dying, and the Magus is dying with it. We travel together to the realm of Umbra, where magic was born. So each of us, okay. So in Roll, I don't know how familiar people are with Roll20. If you want, so I've created 5 character sheets. They're just the basic sheets. If we were playing this in the physical game, all you need is a 3x5 index card, and you write down a few words, and that's all you need. So the Magus is I've set them so that all of us can look at all of these character sheets. So each of us basically needs to pick one of them. That's going to be our index card to like write down a few things. So if we look on the if we look at the very left-hand side, underneath the Fall of Magic logo, it says choose your name. So basically, everyone starts by picking a name, or if you don't like those and you want to make up a different name, go ahead and make up a different name. You can then choose your title. Your title, there are 5 different there are 5 different places that you could be from, and those are places on the map, which we will very likely get to at some point. And each of those has a title that goes along with it. Now, what these titles mean, we'll figure out in play. Like, for example, if you chose to be, so if you chose to be the Fox of Mistwood, are you an actual anthropomorphic talking fox? I don't know. Is Fox is Fox a nickname that you were given? And are you a person? And I don't know. We'll figure that out in play. It's basically the sky's the limit. And the way the game works is once we've figured out our names and our titles, we'll write those down on our index card. And then we'll start playing. And the way it works is, and then each of us will choose a set of tokens. You'll note that there are two. There's two. You'll note that there are two. They're in a set. You can choose. These are representations of like a physical like campaign coin. They're about the size of a. They're about the size of a U.S. half dollar or €1 coin. They have two sides, and you're free to use either one and flip it over flip them over as the story, as you feel is right for the story. So the images are related. Like, the copper one has a tree in full bloom and basically a tree in the summer and a tree in the winter that's lost it. There's one of the sea versus a river. There's one of a sword versus a broken sword. There's one of a raven and an egg in a nest, and there's one of a candle lit and a candle snuffed. The way the game is going to work is one player will basically choose where the magus goes. And just for example, I'm going to take the candle one just as an example. So whoever's playing the magus will move the magus to the first location. And that's going to be where the journey begins. So it's pretty much Fall of Magic begins at Ravenhall. Then when it's your turn, we figure out who wants to go next. Usually it's the person who moves the magus, then moves their own token. And I'll just say, for the sake of argument, I'll just say I'm taking the raven. You'll see that around the location are generally four story prompts. There are going to be locations within the site. You'll take your token and you'll place it on top, and then you'll see that there is a story prompt underneath. So, for example, if I decide that I'm going to go to the scrying pool, my story prompt is why you serve the magus. So I would tell the story to introduce my character, and my short story would be to explain in the story why I am serving the magus. And then once I've concluded, we'll pass it to the next player. We'll do the same thing. We keep going to prompts in the location until it goes back to the person who played the magus. At that point, that player has the choice. They can continue exploring story prompts in this situation, or they can follow the path and move the magus to the next stop on the journey, and then we'll just repeat that. So this scroll is pretty long. The actual physical scroll is 5 feet long. There are a number of locations. There's a couple of little things I do want to call attention. Some of the prompts have this little plus sign next to it. So if, for example, you wanted to choose the rose garden, you pick one of these. Topics, and they are called. These are called traits. So if I went to the rose garden, I would tell a story of the rose garden, and I would pick one of those traits to sort of color my story. And at the end of my story, I would then add that trait as a descriptor to my character. And that's sort of how your character develops. You will pick up and change your traits as time goes on. So again, the plus sign indicates a trait. There's also some that have a little leaf symbol. Those show up a little later in the journey, and the leaf symbol indicates a change. So if you incorporate, that change, you'll need to alter something that's on your card. So you would remove a descriptor, or you would remove something. You would change something from your name, or change your title.
A question. This may
Yes.
have just been something that we did in the past that may or may not be normal. I don't remember. With the traits, the plus traits, can the scene a person narrates add a trait to a different player? I feel like I remember another player doing that one time and tagging someone else with kind in a way that was kind of cool and unexpected. I don't remember if that's normal or not.
I've not encountered that way. Hold on, let me
Either
let
way
me
is
read.
fine.
No. That's
Yeah.
actually really cool. I've not encountered a play that way. Hold on, I'm just going to read what it says. I'm going to read what it says in the instructions. And honestly, this is a story game, and if we think something is cool and we want to do something a little differently, and we're all in agreement, we can totally do that. But here's what it says in traits in the manual. Story prompts with a plus symbol are traits. After describing the scene, select one of the traits listed and describe how that is true. Oh, you are correct. Describe that as how that is true of one of the characters, yours or that of another player. Then write that trait down on your character's note card. So yes,
Word.
I've only ever seen this played where people did that to themselves, but yeah, you were playing it more according to the rules than the past few times I have.
Oh, no worries. It was kind of unexpected when it happened before, but it was kind of unexpected in a cool way of like, oh, I hadn't thought of this character that way.
That is really cool, and that actually opens up some things that definitely opens up some new possibilities. So thank you very much for bringing that out. I hadn't noticed that in the rules. This is one of those games where I kind of learned by playing, by being taught by other people, by not actually looking at the rules too hard. And I'm glad you, and I'm very happy that you brought that up. Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, you bet.
So yes, if you were the one who moved the Magus, when it comes back to your turn again, you have the option to continue exploring the location you're in, or to move the Magus on to the next path. You'll notice that there are a few places on the map where you can choose to go one way or the other. For example, there's over here, there's a point where you could choose to either when you get to this point after you've been to Barleytown, there's a fork in the road, and one could choose either to go to Stormguard Mountains or to go to Mistwood. So yeah, basically you just kind of follow the path. We may not get there. We may not get there tonight, but scrolling the map farther down, there's an ocean. So there's one point where we may take a ship across, and you'll see there are 3 islands. There is a deck of cards that have island prompts. So we'd basically, if it were your turn, you'd draw 2 cards and then choose the one that you wish to play. You then play it face up, and then it is just like another location. Finally, if people want to, there's this torch symbol. So if we get to there, if we want to go to the mouth of the deep, That kind of, we can flip the map over, and that has some, instead of going across the ocean, we could instead like basically go down into the mines of Moria and have like an underground journey. I've actually never done that. I've pretty much always gone overseas, but when it's your turn to move the Magus and you feel like it would be cool to tell an underground story, we can we'll do the Mouth of the Deep and then flip the map over and see a different set of story prompts that will eventually get us back. So ultimately, we're going to go to the Glow in the land of Umbra, and that's where our story concludes.
And say, as someone who's been into the Mouth of the Deep, it's stranger down below.
I've looked at the story prompts, and yes, that is definitely true. There are occasionally we'll see a few prompts that basically have a table. The way that works is if you choose that one, you roll and let the dice decide which prompt you're going to follow. And we'll just use the Roll20 dice roller for that.
This is another, I think, informal thing. I'm almost certain this isn't in the rule, but I've seen people they'll start with the first part of the prompt and get to kind of a critical moment and roll and kind of see what the second half of the prompt looks like.
That's pretty cool.
That's also like, you can do it both ways. It works great both ways.
Oh yeah, that's actually what it says in the rules. Again, I've only been taught how to play this by people who weren't referencing the rules, and yeah, that's what it says. Peril, a numbered story prompted as a peril. Describe the first line as you would a regular story. When you're finished, roll a die and then describe the result.
Oh, so that's funny.
So
I didn't think that was in the rule, but it definitely works fine both ways.
Oh yeah, it totally works. So like for example, the example here is hunting grounds, how we approach unseen. You describe the story, how you approach unseen, and then you would roll the die. I like that. I think that's pretty cool. It's like, hey, what do you know? The game as written is more interesting than the game as I was playing it.
It can be kind of fun too if you think you're headed towards the life you take on that hunting ground and you end up wounded instead, or somebody ends up wounded.
Yep. Okay. Any questions before we pick our characters?
Yeah, I have one quick one. Am I right that the characters 1, 2, 3, 4 in the tab, those are the index card equivalents we'll be using? Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool.
So each of us should pick one. Everyone should have editability on all of those cards, including the Magus. So if someone wants to take notes on, like, wants to open the Magus card and put some notes in the notes tab, that's totally cool. But each of us is going to have one of the characters when you go in to edit that, you'll be able to change your name. So that's how it's going to appear in the game.
I would really like to know who was using which card. So if you can either sign it or just so we don't accidentally have two of us editing at the same time.
I was just going to say, so why don't we do it this way? Jason, why don't you take character 1? Adam, why don't you take character 2? Nathan, you take character 3, and I guess I'll take character 4. And if you click it, you should have editability. Would anyone like to start with choosing a name and a title?
Well,
our player number 1 has.
Yeah, I just did that. So there we go.
Oh, there we go.
I wrote down Caspian, Golem of Ravenhall.
Awesome.
Can I go next?
I was going to say, Adam, why don't your character 2? So why don't you go next?
Okay, so what jumps out at me is Justice, the Fugitive of Stormguard.
Awesome.
I'm sorry if someone wanted to use that.
Nope. I mean, I'm choosing to go last because I've played this game a few times before.
I'm gonna go with. I think I'll go Alamara, Swineherd of Barleytown.
I think I am going to be. Vago, Merchant of Estalia. And this is just a little roll 20 thing. If you're lucky enough to be playing on multiple monitors and you want to move that character sheet into a different tab, so it's not like hovering over the map itself, you can click the little. It looks like two squares superimposed on each other, and if you click that, it'll turn that into just a regular floating window that you can move anywhere you want.
I mentioned when I first logged on, but since everyone else got here after me, if you hear baby sounds or lullaby sounds in the background, that is my baby monitor. Because I have to keep half an ear open in case something goes awry.
I also have to do that, but it's for the cat knocking things over, similar to Mike.
We have that scheduled for 3:30 a.m.
I thought my cat was getting up to no good, but it was my washing machine shaking itself and knocking stuff around. So
Got it.
crisis averted.
Okay, so we have named our characters. We have gone over the rules, gone over safety tools. It's pretty close to the hour. Why don't we take a 7-minute break here, and we'll come back at 5 minutes after the hour, and then we'll start playing earnest. And we're back. Okay. I think there'll be a few points. I know we're all looking at it, I think, just in case we have any viewers at home. I know some of my Gauntlet videos have like maybe all of a dozen viewings, but in case anyone's watching at home, there may be a few points where I'm going to share the screen just so that people get an idea of what we're looking at. So I guess now is the time for our journey to begin. Oh, that's right. One other thing is everyone should choose what tokens they wish to use.
Apologies, I'm spreading these out so I can see them.
That's fine. Just gonna move the other tree over so that you see what both sides look like. Basically, each of us will pick one, and then whatever's left we'll use to represent the Magus.
Unless someone else really is burning for it, haha, I'll take the candle.
Go for it.
I'll take the tree in bloom, or at least with leaves.
Okay, and you can always again in real play this would be a campaign coin, so you could flip it over. So if it makes sense for you to switch to the other token, switch to the other token. Adam, do you have a preference?
I'll take the sword, I think.
Okay. I think I am going to take the river. Which means that the Magus is going to be the Raven. Let me do an edit here because I think you can associate. Yeah. On your if you edit your note card, there's a place where it says default token, and you can select the token you want to use and then hit default token, and then that'll put a little association in. Okay, well, so we have our tokens. We have our names and titles. I guess it is time to actually begin play. Who would like to go first, or would you like me to call someone? I mean, I'm happy to take the first one if people want a chance to kind of see how this goes. I know Nathan's also played this game before.
I had a question because I just don't remember. Do we start at the beginning with a Magus scene, or no? I can't. I know once we're moving how it goes, but I don't remember at the beginning.
Right. Basically, I think the Magus is going to. I like to generally start this that the Magus is already at Ravenhall, and I think it's kind of cool to have our first scenes of each of us arriving at Ravenhall to basically accept the journey. I mean, if you want to already have been at Ravenhall, that's cool too. That's how you introduce your character. Yeah, the Magus is indeed already at Ravenhall. So this would be the scenes where we introduce our characters to the viewers at home.
I'm not seeing this default token thing. I guess I don't really.
Yeah, me either.
You
I
know,
apologize. I've been distracted and looking for that.
now that I'm thinking of it, I'm set as the GM. That may be a GM thing that I need to do. Yeah, never mind. Don't worry about it. It's not strictly necessary.
Okay.
Just so that I'm seeing everything that you do, I'm hopping out and hopping back in as a player, so that way I don't get confused as to what's a GM only thing and what isn't.
Sure. So since my character is of Ravenhall, I'm willing to take a crack at it, even though I haven't done it before. So I guess you can talk me through it.
Please, it's basic. So basically, all you need to do is
put my token on a thing.
Yeah, put your token on the.
Sure.
Yeah, put
Let's
your token
start-
on the board somewhere.
Let's
And
start at the bridge,
okay,
because I think that's a good enough place to start.
absolutely.
um, and title credits roll. So this says the bridge, you are facing the river, and as your camera pans along the water, it comes to a pair of hands washing something, and it moves in, and there's a kind of porcelain mask face being washed by hands that also appear to be made of porcelain. And then the face is turned around, and there's a clicking noise as it goes into place, because the face was in fact literally in the river. And Caspian stands up, and he is a clockwork porcelain doll looking thing, finely dressed, and reaches over next to him were the various tools that he's used to care for Ravenhall, as the last animatronic that still works, the last working golem that is here, and therefore keeping things presentable. That sound about right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Right. And so I can do all four of these. Is that the idea, or?
Well, basically, you pick a prompt, and then once you've done with your store, once you think you've done, then the next player will go, and then the next player will go and pick a prompt. They can pick the same prompt that you already did, if you also feel compelled to have one at the bridge. Oh, and the other thing is it's probably not, as the story progresses, it's, if you want to include another character into your scene, go ahead and say that you're having another, like, we'll ask the player if it's okay to have a scene with that other player, and just kind of like we'll role play out a scene. If you want to include the Magus in your scene, that's absolutely fine too.
Mm-hmm. So
The way and I guess I'll just again I'll read from the manual a little bit. So in each turn, you move your character token, and you pick any of the story prompts that in the location where the Magus is. You describe the scene so you describe the scene from your perspective of the character. I'll go on, like, what is the place like? What do you see and hear? What's going on? What's your character thinking or feeling? How you do this is up to you. You then use the story prompt, and before your turn ends, you must use the story prompt to add an additional element into your description of the scene. And when you're done, turn goes to the next person. I should have explained this beforehand,
Sure.
and I apologize for that.
Hi.
So the example is, so the example story is, so describing the scene, Elmira walks her horse across the bridge. It's made of polished stone and very wide. Though it's early in the day, the bridge is already crowded with travelers from all over the kingdom. And then they would continue using the story prompt. Halfway across the bridge, Elmira pauses, leans over the rail to gaze at her reflection in the water. Her skin is dark brown. Her eyes are warrior's eyes. She pulls off her helmet, and gray streaked hair falls about her shoulders. How did I ever get to be this old? She thinks to herself. And that ends the scene.
Sure.
So again, that's the example from the book.
Okay. So
if you'd like to continue,
so this particular prompt, I feel like, ends with the thing being the general abandonment, like that there aren't any other servants here, that there used to be, but there aren't. So it's basically Caspian and the Magus. My understanding now is different than when I started, which is that I do this prompt and then I pass on and let someone else choose a prompt, possibly the same one, possibly a different one.
Yeah.
Right?
If you'd like to if you'd like a do-over and start
I'm good with it. I feel like it sets a general feeling of encroaching decrepitness on the story that I'm pretty happy with. Just wasn't clear. I'm good with it. I think the end of it is this is like a Caspian memory of there being just more, and now there is like some of the garden doesn't even exist anymore. It seems to have faded into nothingness. And then he just lifts his wheelbarrow and trudges towards the Raven Hall.
I have a Zoom question.
Yes.
With with the raise hand, I'm familiar with this in other products, but not how it works here. Does that just kind of stick around until something happens, or is it like fade? Oh, I see. I have the lower hand option. Okay, sorry, I could have talked that one to
I was
myself.
going to say, yeah, the
Zoom changed a lot of their stuff. I would say probably partially in result of the pandemic. Then, they would put it in a massive email. So here's all the new stuff with Zoom. And unless you read those things, which no one does, you would just log in and be like, oh, everything's confusing. So
I know that popcorn type like scene or torch passing can be kind of awkward online from personal experience. I wonder if it might work for people who are like on deck to be like, you can pick me to go next, if they want to just like maybe use the raise hand. And then if someone feels like they're at the end of their scene, they could nominate a person, or if there's nobody there, that's fine too. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, that's kind of that's a cool idea. I hadn't thought of using the Zoom tools that way. That's awesome. Yeah, we can totally do that. If you if you would like to volunteer, if you have something cool that you like to do a follow-up scene, yeah, go ahead and use the raised hand prompt, and that might indicate that you kind of want to go next.
Putting my quarter on the machine, so to speak. But I'll go next if that's fine with everyone.
Go for it.
So moving, like if you imagine a camera perspective moving around Ravenhall, like this sketch that we're given here, kind of in an aerial perspective pulls back slowly, and we see these rose gardens that have a lot of examples of very fine, very beautiful flowers of many varieties and vivid, almost impossible colors in many respects, but that have clearly all overgrown their respective, pens and beds and whatnot, such that they're growing quite wildly and spilling over into paths and entangling with one another. And we pull back far enough eventually that we see that there is a sort of lumpy figure entangled at the far edge of this rose garden in what looks like is part rose and part hedge. Moving closer, we see that this is Elamura, a swineherd of Barley Town. He's that interesting version of 40 where it looks like maybe he's actually 30 or maybe he's actually 50. It could just be hard living, or it could be just enough nights at the pub that make him look a little bit older, or maybe he's not actually either of those things. It's hard to tell exactly by looking at him, but it's clear that Elamura has lived a life working in the soil and in and around animals. He's just got that look about him, but he's entangled up in these in the thorns of these rose gardens and loudly cursing, saying, the instructions I got said to come this way, and I'm all tangled up in these thorns. Is somebody gonna get me out of here? And he bellows a couple of times, more just in the kind of, is anyone out there to hear me? All that he kind of gets for his efforts are a couple bursts of ravens leaving their roosts on rose hedges, and he doesn't see anyone coming to his aid. The windows that are lit in Raven Hall don't change. Only a few have candles burning inside, even in this dim day, such that eventually he just sort of knuckles down and resigns himself to the fact that he's going to need to get himself out of this mess and he sort of grits his teeth, and with as minimum of grunting and grimacing as he can manage, tears himself through the hedge until he's panting on the other side, looking bedraggled, scratched up, and quite sweaty. And with that, I'm going to add the trait Fierce to Elamura. And that ends my scene.
Can I go next?
I was just going to ask if you would like to go next.
Okay.
If not, I would, but go for it.
Then there's a cut, and we hear the noises. These are noises made by all sorts of animals, which are kept in cages in a long pavilion-like structure, all glassed windows all around, a lot of vegetation, and the central aisle that goes between the cages is almost empty, except for one cloaked figure who's standing there looking at the animals. After a while, the figure pulls down the hood of their cloak, and we can see a young woman with reddish, long reddish hair. She is quite young, but already looks a little world weary. You can see on her face that she's been in battles most of her life. She has this tired look upon her, which belies the young age, and she's wearing clothes which are quite sturdy and good quality, but really weathered, as if she's been traveling for a long time before this point. And this is Justice. She's a fugitive of the Storm Guard tower, let's say. She's come to Ravenhall in an act of desperation, really, because she heard rumors that the Magus might be found here at this point, and she's really hoping that she might be able to meet them. The last time she saw real magic, is the prompt I have, was when their own wizard at the Storm Guard was still alive and operating and helping to guard the castle from outside threats. But since the wizard has died in mysterious circumstances, things have been getting more and more dire at the castle, and there has been some trouble among the ranks of the Rangers, or let's say guardians of the castle, of whom Justice is a member, and she has fallen out of favor with her commander. She has been thrown into prison for insubordination, which she saw as mere common sense, and pointing out some obvious flaws to some decisions that the the command has been making, she was able to escape and took it upon herself to travel to Ravenhall to seek the help of the Magus. But she's still, upon arriving here at Ravenhall, she instinctively gravitated toward the menagerie because she has never really felt as comfortable among people as she did among animals. So this is where her instinct brought her immediately. She's now lacking the courage to enter the castle, let's say. And that would be my scene.
Very cool. Thank you. Okay, I guess it's my turn. So the scene opens. So the scene shifts to. I think we are inside Ravenhall. There's a courtyard like within the building, like one of those like there's like one of those inner courtyards. And there are a couple of small trees that are not doing particularly well that are growing in this this courtyard. And in the center there is there's this large stone basin. It looks like it might be the pool of a fountain, but there's no fountain going. It's just like still basin that's just full of perfectly still water. There is an older woman who is standing there. She is, maybe in her late 50s. She has fairly short cropped gray hair, steely gray eyes. You can tell that she's a woman of means. She's dressed very well. She's wearing she's dressed in like somewhat expensive looking traveling clothes, but there's like embroidery on it. The leather looks I won't say new. It's not necessarily new, but it's very well cared for. She's wearing like fine leather boots. There's a coin purse on her. There's a coin purse at her belt. She's not dressed. I mean, she's not dressed in a dress. She's wearing like breeches, like travelers. Like she looks like a well-to-do traveling merchant because that is who she is. And she is looking down into the reflecting pool at her own reflection, and her gaze shifts to that of the reflection of a man who's probably about her age. He's not quite as tall as she is. She looks at his reflection and then looks across the pool at a man who's standing there. And and this is Vago. She says, she kind of shakes her head with a half grin and said, I must tell you, I did not think that I would. I didn't think I would see you again, and I was very surprised when I heard your call. I understand that you have a journey you need to make. And the man across he's wearing simple simple traveling clothes. Very he's unassuming like middle-aged man. He just nods. He's like leaning on a small staff. And he says, well, I tell you, Vago, there's no one I would rather have on this journey. Given the last time, And Vago nods and smiles knowingly. It says, "Yes, once more for one more journey for old times. One more journey for old times' sake." She sighs deeply, looks up at the sky, looks down into the scrying pool again, and says, "But last time we did this, we were both much younger." And I think that ends my scene. So we've all taken a turn. So it's going to, we've all taken a turn. So whoever would like to go next can choose to have another scene here, or if you would like to, you can move the Magus to the next location. When you move the Magus, you're going to basically tell a short story of the journey to the next location. Now, you're going to do a, and again, so you would move the Magus to the next location is going to be Oak Hills, and the story prompt is the ending of summer. So you would basically do the same thing, but from the Magus's perspective. When you move the Magus, the point of moving the Magus is to tell us a little bit about the Magus and the Magus's story, seeing things from their perspective. Again, if you want to pull other characters into the scene with the Magus, you certainly may. So yes, the next one, the location is going to be the Oak Hills, and the story prompt is the ending of summer.
I think I'd do one more scene here for myself before we move on.
Okay.
I'll move over here. At the menagerie, amongst all the various, and correct me if I'm wrong, are there still animals here, or were they all gone?
I think you have narrative control, and you can establish that.
I couldn't remember if it had been mentioned before.
I don't think that's been...
the servants are all gone. So
okay.
If there are animals, there are probably not very many.
Yeah.
There is just Caspian dealing with them.
Definitely, that's the impression I got. Yeah, so there's some empty, like, pens and something like the medieval equivalent of a habitat that looks set up for one or a different kind of various animals. But occasionally there are these statues of great beasts, and one of them is for a rather proud-looking tiger. And we see Elamura, his shirt off, as he's kind of like tending and mending the various rents in his shirt that he put in there by forcing his way through the thorns. He's kind of sewing them back up as he wanders the grounds. And as he sees the lion, he's cast backward in memory to the last time that he saw real magic, which was a time, it's unclear exactly where this is, but a much younger Elamura, a child, is walking through a sort of topiary garden that eventually looks like it may be here on the grounds of Raven Hall itself. He looks kind of lost, and eventually he kind of comes up to a big topiary lion, and he pets it. And when he pets it, to his delight, the topiary animal gets up, or at least it starts to kind of do the cat, big yoga stretch before it gets ready to move. Front paws all the way stretched forward, hind quarters arched all the way up. And young Elamura is surprised by this at first, and then pretty delighted. The lion doesn't appear to be able to venture very far, but the two sort of he continues petting the topiary lion in situ until it kind of gets cozy and curls up donut style to go back to sleep. until eventually there's kind of a behind shot of an older middle-aged male figure who says, I didn't think there was anyone out in the grounds. Let's find out where your parents are. And it, as it kind of pulls back, it's clear that that's the Magus interacting with Elamura as a child, though oddly, the Magus looks pretty much the exact same age as they did in that prior scene with Vaga. And that's the end of my scene.
That's awesome.
So-
Love it.
Yeah, like I put in the chat, unless someone has another scene, I can have the Magus rolling out to the Oak Hills. All right. Well, he's the bird, right?
Yes.
All right. So we'll move him over there. So the Magus has arranged people onto this trip who, for various reasons, whether they feel like they owe him something or they're hoping for a little more wonder or just because they have nothing else to do, they've all agreed to go for Umbra and where magic was born. And the Magus is not taking very much with him. Apparently there's some food, and he's loaded things into a cart, which Caspian is driving. And he looks back at Ravenhall, and they're getting out on the last day of summer. He goes, this was a good place for a time, but we won't be coming back here again. And then he turns, and as they start to roll away, I'm guessing our swineherd Elamura turns back for another last look and discovers there's nothing there, nothing but empty fields.
Certainly.
And they roll onwards towards the Oak Hills. And I think I can, that kind of bookends it, but then we'll say as they're the Oak Hills roll out before them, the summer has just dried some things up, but there's already a chill in the air that's hinting at the beginning of cooler temperatures, which is almost welcome at the moment, even though it pretends things that we know will make the journey harder. And I think that's where I'm going to leave that.
Very cool. Adam, would you like to, I think it's you and I haven't taken a turn yet. Would you like to go next, or shall I?
So what do we do now? Do we join the Magus or?
We're now all, yeah, when the Magus moves, that shifts scene. So we're now so now we're all at the Oak Hills. So it's basically the same thing. Pick a story. We're at Oak Hills, so you can go ahead and pick one of the story prompts for the Oak Hills. So Harper's Road, or Breaking Camp, or By Firelight, or At Dawn.
Can I just join the Magus at the ending of summer prompt? And
absolutely, I was just going to say, or if you want to continue there, you may absolutely do that.
do a little establishment of my story there,
please,
if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So the assumption is that we all travel together from now on.
The assumption is that we are traveling together. Yes.
So I think Jason mentioned something about a cart that Caspian is driving, something like this. Okay, so at the very end, the very edge, at the back of the cart, Justice is sitting, picking red and yellow leaves off the trees that they are passing, because it seems like autumn is already beginning in these parts, maybe a little earlier than it should. Justice is doing this absent-mindedly to occupy herself with something, not not to think about the road ahead. The Magus was very vague when she finally managed to meet him, and he didn't want to discuss the troubles at her home fortress. He didn't want to discuss the threat that her people are facing. He only said that she should accompany him on this journey, and everything will be answered during this journey. Being short of options, Justice had no other choice but to accompany the Magus, although she was quite startled by some of the companions that the Magus is keeping at this point, especially this strange artificial-looking creature who is driving the cart, but he seems to be doing a pretty good job at it. So, who is Justice to judge? For now, she decided to put her trust in the Magus and see where the road takes her, and hopefully, she might get some answers as to what is troubling the people at her fortress, and maybe find a solution with the help of the Magus or without it. That'd be it for me for now.
Fantastic, thanks. I think I'm the last to go for this round. So, I'm going to take Harper's Road. So as the five of us continue on this journey, Caspian is driving this cart. I'd imagine some of us take turns riding in the cart with our supplies. Some of us take turns, and some of us walk beside it. I think we've got a pair of. I think the cart's being drawn by a. Did we establish that it was being drawn by a particular animal? If not, I think it's being drawn by a pair of horses. And as such, it's being, it's a horse-drawn cart. It really isn't going any faster than you could walk. It's just that if you're on the cart, you're not actually walking. And we're continuing up this road, and I think Vago's on foot for a while at this point, and she's trudging along the road, and when she and at that one point when she looked back at the way she'd come, and Ravenhall isn't there anymore, she shakes her head and turns toward the Magus, who I think is probably sitting. I think this Magus is sitting in the front of the cart next to Caspian, but Caspian is actually driving. Just kind of shakes her head. But this road is it's a well-traveled road. It's the end of summer, so it's not particularly. I mean, it's normally well-traveled in certain times of year. This is not one of those times of year where there's a lot of travel. It's not quite harvest time, so there's not a lot of other travelers on the road. So it's mostly just us. So that makes it it's a wide road. It's a dirt road. It's rutted. It's been dry, but there's no no mud in the road, but it's a lonely road. And at one point we come over a hill. At one point we come over like one of the first of the Oak Hills, and it's a point where you have a decent view around, and she looks back at where Ravenhall once stood and is looking down into a valley in the Oak Hills. And at this point, she is wistfully thinking, and there's kind of like the scene shifts that indicates that we're experiencing that we're seeing one of her memories, and we're seeing Vago, but she's younger. Looks like she's maybe in her, she's maybe 20 or 25 years younger than she appears now. And she's standing on the dock. There's a vast, spectacular city behind her. But she's standing on the dock, and there's a large merchant ship, and she's holding the hands of another woman who looks younger than she is, and she says, and she sighs deeply and says, and here we must part. I need to travel. I need to travel. Here we must part. You have your life. You have your life at sea. I have my life here in this city. But I know we shall meet each other again. And they embrace, and the other woman gets aboard this, and the other woman gets aboard this ship, and the ship casts off, and sails away as Vago just kind of watches the ship recede into the distance. And again, in the memory, there's a hand on her shoulder, and she turns, and it is the Magus, exactly as we see him today. And he says, and he says, I'm sure you, I am certain by the powers that I control, I am certain that you will see her again. Now come, we must depart. And she heads back into the city, the company with the mages. And then it shifts back to her walking along the cart, looking at the Magus, and she just kind of shakes her head. I think that's the scene. I think we've all gone. I know that Caspian and I think Caspian and Elamara have not entered the Oak Hills yet, so one of you should go next.
I can do making camp. That's probably good. I'm putting it as me doing it, but I think it's actually a group effort, and it is a curious thing because the group doesn't know each other very well, but they are very capable at making camp together quickly. They know what they need to do, whether that's Elamira tending to the horses, or Justice securing the site, or Vago helping to prepare the tents spread over top of the leaves, or rather the branches, and everyone's able to work together on it, in some ways almost like clockwork. And when they're done, they find that Caspian has also pulled some herbs while they've been walking and has made a cup of tea for each of them that is wonderfully calming, even while things feel discordant and strange. And as he passes it out, he says, "It is called a comfort for a reason." And they drink deep, and are greeted that night with pleasant dreams. And I'm going to grab kind.
Cool. I'm ready with the scene 2. I'll move to the next morning. At dawn, my morning ritual. It's pretty early morning. The sun is fully up though, and the sunlight is filtering down through the tree canopy. And camp was made near to some fresh, clear running water. Not much more than a stream, but enough to wade into, enough to make tea with, as Caspian did. And standing in the stream some distance away from camp for the sake of respect for his comrades and modesty for himself. Elamura is kind of stripped down to an undershirt and rolled up trousers as he bathes himself in the stream. And there's a song of someone singing who is singing with gusto, but without much practice, kind of filtering through the trees. I'm curious, of the other traveling companions, who seems like the most likely that they might creep close enough to make out the words that he's singing?
I think Vago might be curious at that.
All right. Well, if you'll indulge me, I Googled folk songs about pigs, and so I'm just going to sing a few lines. I'm terrible at singing, but I'm going to sing this. "'Twas an evening in October, I'll confess I wasn't sober. I was carting home a load with manly pride, when my feet began to stutter and I fell into the gutter, and a pig came up and lay down by my side. Then I lay there in the gutter, and my heart was all aflutter, till a lady passing by did chance to say, 'You can tell a man that boozes by the company he chooses.' Then the pig got up and slowly walked away. Walked away, he was too particular to stay. You can tell a man that boozes by the company he chooses. Then the pig got up and slowly walked away." And he kind of continues in that vein as he performs his morning ablutions, sort of in that self-deprecating way, but with more than probably a grain of truth in this, in his own life. He's also the sort of man that is tanned in the way that even though he's scrubbing himself red, always looks dirty, but actually isn't. That's just the stain on his clothes that's permanent and on his skin. And that's my scene.
I think at the end, if I could like tag on to that a little bit, at the end of Elamura's at the end of Elamura's song, like Vago, who's just kind of just standing just on the inside of the tree line, just kind of like gives kind of a slow clap.
Ah, yes. And when Elamura realizes he's being observed, like kind of turns kind of blind with like probably some sort of like sud or something in his eyes, and kind of like does an exaggerated bow and says, "Thank you, thank you."
That was a great scene. I love that. And thank you for the performance.
You're welcome.
I'm looking at the time. It's a few minutes before the hour. Why don't we take like a 9-minute break and come back at 5?
Can I just follow that up with a short scene of my own?
Please.
It should fit right in. And
please.
I'll be done with it. Okay, so I also wanted to move to dawn and morning ritual. Justice woke up with the sun as usual because even though she's not, she actually caught herself realizing the fact that she's not on active duty anymore. She's not a ranger anymore. She's not expected to be up and ready to go at the break of dawn. But it's just years of practice and routine that are hard to root out. So she, not knowing what to do, she just went on doing her usual morning routine, which is she took out her sword and started sharpening it, as she used to do every morning for the last however many years when guarding the fortress of Stormguard. And it's not actually her sword. Her sword, which is issued to every ranger, is of much better quality. But it was taken away from her when she was arrested and put in prison for disobedience. This is just a random sword she grabbed on her way out when she was escaping the fortress, and she's cursing under her breath a little because of how dull and crude the blade is. But this is what she has to work with, and she is able to lose herself in the work a little when suddenly a strange shouts, it's shouting, it's screaming. Is someone in pain? No, it's actually someone is singing, probably. It's so startling to her to hear these strange noises here in the otherwise very quiet woods, that she does what she hasn't done since she was very, very little and was given her first sword by her parents. She cuts herself on the blade, which she unfortunately has sharpened better than she thought possible, apparently. And at first, her instincts cause her to jump to her feet and raise the sword, ready to repel any attack. Then she realizes that it's just the swineherd singing to himself, and well, it takes all sorts, I guess, she thinks, and sits back down and returns to her interrupted activity. And scene.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
Okay, it is by my clock it is it is just at the hour. So why don't we take another 10-minute break, and we'll come back and we'll continue the story of this journey. Be back at 10 minutes after. Okay, so I think we have all now I think we have all now taken a turn like doing some, like with one of the story prompts here in Oak Hills. I think I'm up next, but I may be I think I'm the next I think I'm the one who hasn't gone yet. Has anyone like, since we came to Oak Hills, I've kind of like lost track of how many story prompts people have gotten a chance to take, unfortunately.
I think Elamura is covered. I think he's good for Oak Hills.
Okay. So I think I'm next. So if no one has, unless someone wants another scene in Oak Hills, I would volunteer to move the Magus forward. Is that okay? Okay. So we are moving to Barleytown. So the next day we break camp, and we're still starting to get. I mean, we're still getting to know each other, but we made an efficient camp, and the night passed uneventfully. We pulled up our tents and reloaded our cart and continued down the road to Barleytown, which is, I mean, it's not as big as a city, but it's one of the biggest settlements around here. Barleytown is it's a city that it's a town. There's a keep on a hill that's in the center of town. There's there's buildings that are built around it. There's a river nearby that has a number of mills of various sorts. Most of them are grain mills. As we approach Barleytown, as we descend out of the Oak Hills. As we get out of the Oak Hills, the land opens up and it becomes agricultural. There are lots of fields of grain. I think we established that it is late summer, so it's not quite harvest time, but the fields of barley, it's getting close to harvest. Like, maybe in another 3-4 weeks, it'll be time to start threshing the barley to make into grain for bread, or to process to make, to brew for beer, or to make into whiskey. But there's other things. There's fruit trees. There's a few fruit orchards. There's some vegetable gardens, but it is a lot of barley. And the Magus is looking at it all wistfully, and it says, "Well, I think we're going to," and it's been the better part of the day traveling. It's starting to get the sun's starting to get low in the sky as we approach the wooden palisade, the wooden walls around Barleytown, and we approach the gates, and the guards challenge our party, but not only kind of half-heartedly, again, because night is starting to fall. And that's when they notice and the Magus has this wide brim hat, and he's kind of like turned it down like over his eyes to attempt to obscure his appearance. But the guards suddenly realize, oh, it's the Magus. The Magus has returned to Barleytown.
I think Elamura is obvious a fellow enough sort that he's maybe the first to break the ice. It's like, don't hold us up now. Don't you know who that is? Whereas the Magus perhaps might have preferred to be a bit more incognito. Elamura is all about sort of, don't you know who I am or who I'm traveling with?
Got it. I love it. I love that detail. Thank you. And there's a murmur from the guards, and says, and one of them says, "Oh, the Magus has returned to Barleytown." And there's a bit more conversation, and we're just gonna like cut the scene, and the party is now at so the party is being like ushered into the hall that's at the it's like the Lord of Barleytown's like great hall in his keep, which is on a hill overlooking the town. And we are walking in, and a kind of large, kind of jovial man. I see he's got like a full beard and a full head of like shoulder length, like auburn hair. Comes forward and says, "Oh, it is our great honor to be. It is my great honor to have the Magus and his retinue as our guests for dinner tonight. Please, please, come in." He claps his hands, and servants come up, and servants come up and offer food and drink, and then we'll move things a little farther, and there's a banquet in the feast hall in the Magus's honor. And the Magus is like not wanting to offend the Barley Lord, but he's clearly uncomfortable and doesn't particularly want to be the center of attention. But finally, after after like calls for speech, the Magus stands and just puts up his hand and says, "Friends, I greatly appreciate this honor that you've given me. It has been many years since I've enjoyed the hospitality of the Lord of Barleytown." And then there's some raucous applause. And the Magus continues and says, I'm glad to be passing through here one more time. I'm my companions and I are on a journey, and I'm not sure how it may be even longer before I come back here again, if at all. And if I do not, I wish to express my gratitude to all of you for this lovely evening. And at the mention that the Magus may not be coming back, there's weaker applause. There's a gasp, and there's like that. There's that indecipherable but like concerned murmuring in the crowd. And then he sits down and takes a long draft of this big mug of this big tankard of dark ale that everyone has been served. I think that's the scene.
I have a scene I can do, but I thought it would make more sense after other people went. If no one has any ideas, I can certainly do it now, though.
So one nice thing about Barleytown is there are a whole lot of prompts here.
All right. Well, I will go ahead and do one then. And move myself over to Swine Hill, a battle fought long ago. Caspian doesn't have a whole lot of use for food and drink. And so while this raucousness is going on inside, has mostly been tending to things, but finds himself, even though he doesn't really need to be there, up on Swine Hill, where there's where the pigs graze, but there's a whole lot of broken stone all over the place. It looks like maybe it was a fence once upon a time. And as he looks over it, his memory slides backwards to when Barleytown didn't even exist. And there's a clashing of armies, a whole bunch of creatures that look similar to Caspian, that move with mercury quickness and swords, fighting against rock giants being driven by another sorcerer back in the time when wizards fought and the skies rained with their power. And as one giant falls, we realize that what looked like was a fence was actually the remains of this battle. And in retrospect, it all kind of seems pointless. The magic's gone. The other golems are gone. The other sorcerer's gone. but it's also rather peaceful when you get right down to it. The end.
I like that a lot. Thank you. Any
I have a
volunteers?
scene. If no one else wants to go now. Justice doesn't feel very comfortable at the banquet of the Barley Lord, at the residence of the Barley Lord. She, as soon as it becomes clear that the Magus doesn't intend to have any extended discussion of the threats that are going on at her hometown or home fortress, as it were, and also there's so many people around the Magus all the time that the Justice really doesn't feel like it's her place to try to occupy him too much. So she just finds a moment to slip away unnoticed from the banquet and wanders the streets of the town for a moment and is drawn to the warm glow of light from the tavern. And I'll move my token to the Inn of the Axe and Fiddle. There, among the common people, some soldiers, some farmers, she feels much more at ease. It is much more her sort of company. She orders a mug of mead because she has heard stories about the famous mead of the Barley Town. She hasn't had a chance to taste it, of course, ever before, and she relishes the opportunity and as a rare moment of quiet and semi-comfort that she is experiencing. And I have a question now. Would any of you accompany Justice to the inn, possibly?
Oops, I keep muting and I'm muting myself. I think Elamura is a pretty easy invite to any scene like this one.
Okay. So Justice and Elamura are sharing the mead. I mean, they are sitting at the. I think it's quite crowded at the inn, so maybe they just find places at the bar, and they order some drinks. They talk a little. Justice is cautious not to reveal too much about her. She just talks about some general things. She talks about the place where she's from. She talks a little about her work there, but she doesn't mention the prison and the escape or any of these things. But I think there's they start to feel more comfortable in each other's company, and then she hears something that paralyzes her for a moment because it's it rises above the clamor of the inn quite clearly, at least to her, because she recognizes the words of the official song of the Rangers of Stormguard, the song that she used to sing with other people in her service for years. Every training session, every parade, and any occasion of this sort. And she at first she has to fight off the impulse to just join in with whoever is singing, Then she starts sneakily looking around to see where the song is coming from, and she starts to hide awkwardly behind Elamura. Maybe Elamura is noticing this sudden strange behavior from Justice, and she notices two officers of her service sitting at a table in the corner of the tavern, drinking and singing loudly. They're clearly on a how do you say, on a pass to that they could so they could go to another town and have some fun, and she without any explanation, at the risk of seeming rude to Elamura even, she stands up, she puts the hood on her head so as not to be recognized, and slinks away from the tavern, just to avoid any risk of being recognized and taken prison again by the officers. And then, as she leaves, she has this sudden thought that she knows it's wrong, but then she realizes, I'm not an active ranger anymore. I'm actually a fugitive, a renegade, as it were. And she decides, without much more thinking, she decides to well, wait, maybe I went too far with that. Yeah, she decides to go to the tavern's stables and easily finds the horses of the two officers who are inside the tavern. And I wonder what piece of equipment would it be cool to snatch away.
Saddle would make things pretty inconvenient.
Yeah, okay, let's go with that. So she doesn't have the nerve to actually steal the horse of one of the officers, but she thinks a saddle would be a nice change of pace. She wouldn't have to ride bareback anymore. So yeah, she thinks after all these years of service, she deserves that at least. And she, although despite being an ex-con at this point, she actually commits her first illegal act by stealing this and moves away back to the residence of the Barley Lord, where the Magus is. And where we are staying, presumably, all of us.
I think that's. I like that idea. I think that was kind of implied, was that the Barley Lord was putting everyone up.
Yeah.
I think if Justice happens to catch Elamura still in the tavern, having stayed behind, like maybe through a window as Justice moves by, she sees that Elamura has sort of maybe intuited some of the situation and has clapped both of these rangers on the shoulder, like one arm in arm, and is very loudly, bellowingly singing the same song he was singing before. And as he kind of ends the end of the the pig verse, he points to someone else in town that he clearly knows, who's some sort of like milkmaid, and the milkmaid sings the milkmaid verse, and then the goat herd sings the goat herd verse, and he seems to be making a very genial but loud distraction for these rangers to be totally fixated on while you're tending to whatever you need tending.
Okay, great.
I love that. That's awesome.
I can go next.
I was just going to ask, would you like to take a scene, or shall I?
Yeah.
Go for it.
To the farmer's market, and I was going to ask if Caspian might come along for the scene.
Happy to do so.
So a lot of the people of Barleytown are familiar faces to Elamura, as this is his natural environment. And a lot of them seem to give him sort of that cordially dismissive attitude of like, oh, look who it is, it's Elamura. And he's like, oh, I know, I'm your favorite person, aren't I? He has sort of a rapport with a lot of these these sellers in the marketplace. But his specific errand here is that he's been given a big lengthy list on a long scroll of paper from the Magus, of all the various supplies that we'll be needing to take with us in our cart for the road ahead, as up to now we've been rather minimally provisioned. And as Elamura works his way down the list, crossing off, this many sacks of rice and this many casks of wine, he notes to himself, I'll say that the Mega seems to have each of us pretty well pegged in terms of what our appetites might need, but I don't see anything on this list that matches up to one such as yourself, Caspian. I wonder if the Magus has merely forgotten you, or if he's intentionally left you out. But I'm holding the purse today, he says, as he kind of holds it up and jingles the coins in it. What makes you happiest, Caspian?
So I think Caspian is not used to that kind of question. And goes, soap. I have often thought that any given journey would be greatly enhanced by the presence of soap. I can't smell things, but I am aware of when things are unclean.
You can't smell things, you say. Well, that's one more reason for us to perhaps be better friends. Ha ha ha! And Elamura laughs rather rudely. And he says, he finds, whoever the renderer is in town and says, I'll have a crate of soaps and oils. You look like you might need oils, Caspian. Is that true? All those fine parts working together.
Caspian goes, no, actually, although my surface does sometimes need cleaning, and the oils can give a nice sheen, which I think might be considered attractive. Yes, some oils would be lovely. Thank
Then a
you.
crate of soaps and a bottle of your finest, shiniest oil. And Elamura, haggles down until he gets, the price that he wants, and parts with as few of the Magus' coins, and complaining all the while, and writes on the end of the list soap and oils, and then kind of makes a bit of a show of crossing each of those off and says, there, now each of us is covered.
And Caspian is like, you are quite good at that. I've seen other hagglers, and they were often dressed much more finely.
I'll tell you a bit of a secret. And I make a kind of conspiratorial, putting my hand in front of my mouth to whisper, if they don't like you very much, sometimes they're happy just to be rid of you.
Interesting. I'm not sure how to apply that in this circumstance. I could probably make them dislike me.
No, I think
you smell bad. You smell so bad that a pig would get up and walk away.
You are learning. And I think that'll be the end of my scene.
I love that. That's fantastic. I think I need to have a scene in Barleytown, and I'm trying to think where Vigo, merchant of Estalia, would be interested in going. I think Vigo is also going to the farmer's market. Kind of to keep an eye on Elamara, to make sure that he doesn't like squander our resources on frivolous things. But so she's kind of like been so so at the farmers market, it's it's a busy market. There's like all kinds of people selling their wares of various sorts. It's mostly agricultural, but there's a few artisans that are selling leather goods or iron goods or wooden goods. So yeah, Vago's been like kind of following at a distance, trying to make herself a little trying to make herself not quite so conspicuous, so that Elamara doesn't quite realize that someone's been that she's following him. But once she sees that he seems to be doing a pretty darn good job, she kind of I think like during the course of some of Elamara's transactions, yeah, Bagel will walk up and says, "Oh, fancy you! Oh, hello, Caspian. Hello, Elamara. Was not expecting to see you here." She lies.
I am learning how making people dislike me could get me things.
It's a tricky art, though. It's a tricky needle to thread, as they say. You have to get them to dislike you just the right amount. Not so much that they call the guards, but just enough that they agree to whatever you say, so that you'll, keep on moving.
To make them get yes, I've heard of this. I've heard of this technique. I've used it a few times in the past. Well, you seem to be doing a fantastic job of acquiring goods for our journey. I have a few other things that I need to take care of, but so I will leave you to it, and I will see you both later. And she nods. And she's going to head off and is going to check with. So I'm thinking that Elamara is mostly buying like the foodstuffs and the consumable supplies. Vago is going to do. Trying to think what she's going to go off and deal with a few of the merchants that are selling kind of like more expensive things that we may only need one or two of. So she's going to go and buy some. She's going to buy like some extra tent. She's going to go to some of the people who make clothing, and she starts buying some like warmer gear. Like some fur coats, just in case we end up like going over a mountain pass where things get cold. And she buys. I think maybe she buys this. I think she's going to get a couple of tents. Just again more traveling gear, more things that traveling / survival / bad weather gear to get ready for the journey, because I mean we've only gotten to Barleytown. We've got some. If we're going all the way to Umbra, we are definitely going to be staying in places that are not particularly hospitable. And when it's time to pay for all of these things, she opens up her purse and she pulls out a gem and trades this gem for all of these goods, and also gets a couple of people. She also hires a couple of porters to basically carry this stuff back to our cart. And I think that's the scene. So I am looking at time. We've got about 20 minutes until the session ends. I think we've all had a turn in Barleytown at this point. This might be a good. I'm thinking this might. I mean, it's a little on the early side. This might be a good time to. This might be a good break point. We'll kind of pick it up. Someone can choose. Basically, someone can choose to either In next session, someone can choose to either move on to Mistwood or move on to Stormguard.
I nominate Justice.
Definitely.
I
Whether
mean,
or
I'm
not they
curious.
want to face their past or not.
Exactly. I was going to say I would nominate Justice to make that decision. But yeah, why don't we?
I think missed what it is then.
Okay. Well, we can.
Yeah.
I was just going to say.
You missed what it was. If you look at the map, we have a choice. It's whether or not we head towards Stormguard or up towards Mistwood.
Oh, I know. I think Adam was saying Mistwood. It is.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I did not understand.
Sorry.
I'm old and my ears are terrible. I
No.
apologize.
I misheard it the other way first too.
Yeah.
I probably mispronounced it. Yeah, I think Mistwood would make sense. Given what we established about Justice's story and the Magus's apparent disinterest at them in the matters going on at Stormguard, and also I think the northern route gives us some interesting options as well.
I'm actually as a player, I'm actually kind of interested in going the northern route because every time I've ever played Call of Magic, we've always gone through Stormguard, which is cool. There's some really cool prompts there. I as a player am interested in going the other direction, but that's just that's just me.
All right.
So if
Okay,
everyone's
well,
okay with it.
Okay, if that's cool.
Also,
why don't we?
I want to make a revision to my last scene. I don't think Justice stole a saddle. That wasn't very well thought. I think she stole a traveling cloak. She left her dirty, muddied, torn cloak on the horse with the things, and she stole this nice new comfortable cloak from one of the rangers.
I love it.
She took this as sort of a retribution for what she had to endure. Yeah. So
I love it.
I wanted to make that official.
Okay, I love it. That's awesome. Okay, well, I guess we will pick it up here next time. Yeah, Justice will get to choose where the Magus goes. It sounds like you're gonna pick Mistwood, but you've got a week to figure it out. I really enjoyed this game, guys. This was a whole lot of fun. I think I'm going to end the recording, and we will pick it up here next time. And please stay on. We'll do a debrief after we end. So thanks everyone for watching part 1 of Fall of Magic, and we will see you all later. Take care.